Welcome to In Her Voice, a podcast to help you learn how to trust the most important person in your life, yourself. My name is Kelly Covert, and I am your host and fellow traveler as we explore what it means to soften your inner critic, listen to your inner voice, and give yourself permission to be deeply and wholly your wonderful, beautiful self. I'm so glad you're here. Hello, everyone. This is Kelly, and you are listening to In Her Voice. Thank you so much for being here today. I am excited to let you know that I have an interview for you today with the amazing and energetic Shelley Paxton, and we are talking about defining success on your own terms, which goes right along with this concept of softness that I've been digging into since the podcast has been back. And I'm really excited just to share some of Shelley's insights with you. She has a great practical takeaway for you to help you understand if you are feeling aligned, if you are feeling like the success that you're having is actually the success that you want, which really is a tricky question, isn't it? So let me tell you a little bit about Shelley, and we'll get right to the interview. Meet Shelley Paxton. Think Brene Brown meets Biker Babe with a dash of Liz Gilbert. As a former chief marketing officer of Harley-Davidson, Shelley found herself at the top of the proverbial mountain, feeling success empty instead of successful. That awakening led her on a profound Sabbatical journey that became her mission, business, and best-selling book, Sabbatical, A Corporate Rebel's Guide to Finding Your Best Life, named #1 on Forbes' 21 Books to Read in 2021 list. She's leading a revolution to rewrite the script of success and liberate a billion souls. I hope that you are ready. Let's get right to it with Shelley. Well, hello there, Shelley Paxton. Welcome to In Her Voice.
Well, hello, Kelly. How are you?
I'm so good. And we just had just a short little pre hit the recording button conversation. And already I feel energized and joyful and so excited about what we're going to talk about.
Oh, me too. And I feel a soul connection, which is always my favorite. Just right at the very beginning when you feel like, oh, this is going to be juicy and I'm feeling it.
That's exactly right. So what we're really digging into today is one of my most favorite topics, and it's my most favorite because it's also something that I struggle with, and that is defining success on your own terms. And gosh, why does that have to be so dang hard? Why don't we just start with that?
Yeah. And you know what? I love that you said it that way because it is my life's work as well. And there's a reason it's my life's work because it is the thing that I have the constant struggle with. And it is my reminder to, be in the mess of it, to share being in the mess of it, to share my insights from it, and hopefully inspire others to know that it's possible to do this on our own terms and not this checklist that so many of us were handed early on in life.
Yes. Okay. Well, so I was digging around on your website and I found the Rebel Leaders Manifesto.
Ooh.
And so first I will say, I'm going to put a link to this in my show notes. If you're listening, pause, go there now and read it. But I put a big star beside this because oh my gosh, I felt like my mind just blew up when I read it. This is a quote from the Rebel Leaders Manifesto. If the path before us is clear, we're on someone else's path. Okay. All right. Podcast over. I mean,
mic drop.
Right? Okay. So can we dig into that? Because I feel like this is the heart of the discussion. We don't need warm up here. Let's go right to the meat. And that is so often the only way we feel we can define success is by looking at other people's success. And that's not really how it works.
Yeah, there's so much truth in that. And I love that you pulled that out. And listen, I'm the first to say that I am not the first person to have written, some version of that statement that you quoted. And I wrote it in my own words because it's so freaking important. And it's something that I need to remind myself. Listen, I have the Rebel Leaders Manifesto sitting in front of me right now because it is always on my desk. It is here to serve as a reminder that I'm blazing my own trail. And yeah, I'm excited. Thank you for including a link to that. And hopefully we'll get into some of the other yumminess. But, the reality is most of us, I won't speak for everyone, but most of us, including me, have been conditioned to what success, quote unquote, should look like. And the shoulds are so dangerous. We should all over ourselves. And this is how we veer away from our truth and away from blazing our own trail because, in some cases it's culture, in some cases it's our parents, it's our religion. I mean, you name it. It's our peer group who is telling us that success should look like, in my case, I'll speak very personally and we can dive into my story at any point. In my case, it was, success looks like climbing the corporate ladder. It looks like working on sexy brands, global brands. It looks like big C-suite titles. It looks like shiny objects, and I could go on, and I'm guessing that resonates with you and a lot of your listeners. But I didn't know any different.
Yeah, I hear you because I think that what I hear you saying about your own career is that you were doing everything right.
Quote unquote.
Quote unquote.
Right. Yes, exactly. Exactly. Right by somebody else's standards, right on someone else's terms. And to be honest, what I write about in my book is the realization at 46 years old, after we're in the midst of an incredible corporate career. I mean, I did all those things that my dad told me were success and that frankly he did as well. And it took me first getting sick, then getting really burnt out, then getting to the top of the proverbial mountain where I found myself as chief marketing officer of Harley Davidson, which is a super sexy job, let's be honest. And it's the big title and the big paycheck and it's all the things I thought I was supposed to be doing. And I felt really empty inside. And I realized in that moment that I was living my dad's dream. And I just wonder how many people are out there or how many people got woken up with this pandemic that we've been living through for the past 2 years to say, oh my God, I've been on autopilot.
Yeah.
And that was me. And listen, I say all of that and I have zero regret that is the path I went down because that's the path I went down and it served me very well and it took me around the world. So no regrets. And at the same time, I feel so blessed to have been shaken out of that fog and to have realized that it was my time to understand my own truth, to reconnect with my soul, and ultimately to blaze my own trail, which is sabbatical and rewriting the script of success on your own terms. One that I say, and I have this in the Rebel Leaders Manifesto too, is success full and not success empty, which I think is how so many of us feel.
Mm-hmm. Well, and it's this whole idea of like, when I get the title, when I get the salary, when I have all of the things that I think I should have, then I'll be happy.
Truth.
Right? And so
much truth.
What I hear you saying is about finding that happiness now, because like you got to the high point and you didn't feel happy.
Yeah, I didn't feel fulfilled. Like I've thought a lot about, happiness versus joy versus fulfillment. And, they all play a role. Happiness feels very situational. Joy feels more macro to me, like feeling joy in our lives, over the smallest things and the biggest things. And then there's this idea of fulfillment, which is really what I mean when I say successful. I mean, what does it look like to live your life feeling truly fulfilled from the inside out? because you're creating your life in service of your truth and your values. And it doesn't mean necessarily leaving your job, by the way. That happens to be my story. I walked away because what I didn't realize at the time, and I know so clearly now, 5.5 years later, is I was meant to walk this path. It was my heroine's journey so that I could bring this inspiration and motivation back to others and say, I got you. Let's go on this journey together. Let's have more of us living lives that are truly successful. Because life is too short. The second chapter of my book is called If Not Now, Then When? Because I am the person who not only got the wake-up call, mine came, many years before COVID came to town, but I know a lot of people had their wake-up calls more recently. But mine came, I just made the decision to leave this super high-profile job, even though everyone in my life, including my family, thought I had lost my freaking mind. Lost my mind. They were like,
why would you give that up?
Yeah, nobody does this, Shelley. And my parents are from the generation that's like, you never leave a job without having another job. Period. End of story. I mean, talk about that as a script for success, right? That's somebody else's script. And I, at that moment in my life, decided that I was hitting override on that script. And I still didn't know how to write my own. I'm still in the process of authoring my own, if I'm honest. But the reality is I had to override what everybody else was telling me crazy because, name of your podcast, I was listening to my inner voice. Yeah. Period. It was telling me that if I were going to keep living this way, that by the time I was 50, and remember this was happening around 45, 46 years old, I was going to be burnt out, completely miserable, and I might not even be alive to tell the story. And what a shame that would be. So I, as I went out on this journey, 8 months into it, and this is why the second chapter is called If Not Now, Then When? 8 months into it, my super successful dad, who taught me, who handed me this outdated, not mine script of success, went down from 2 massive strokes, brain hemorrhages. He was 71 years old, super fit, was still on like 6 boards, had only retired about 2 years earlier. He is still alive and with us, and he is significantly impacted by the brain damage. He is not the dad I used to have. He does not operate in the world in the same way. And that took me down. That was like, wow, I am not turning back. I am creating forward, and I am creating and authoring my life on my terms. And, I invite everyone to really understand and pay attention to those moments, because that little inner voice is speaking to us all the time. First it's a whisper, and then it's a shout, and then we get whacked with the 2x4 like I did. The end of my time at Harley came because of a nightmare that was waking me up almost every single night for the last year I was there. Then my dad goes down as a reminder that you can work your butt off for decades and have all of this quote unquote success, but you never know how long it's going to last. So why not enjoy it now, like you said?
Yeah. It's so fascinating how we all have a different path to the same lesson. Yeah. Right. So for me, I actually have never had what I would call like a regular job. I'm a musician, and I've, taught at universities, and I play in an orchestra, and, now I'm doing development work for that same orchestra. Plus I've always had my own businesses, teaching flute, coaching triathlon, and now being an inner voice coach and doing my podcast. And I've never struggled with choosing that path, because I always felt like I just can't do like a quote unquote normal job. Like it's just not in me. Like that's not how my body and my soul are made. However, what I have struggled with in sort of this beautiful life and career of many things that I have created is feeling like because I'm not making huge amounts of money, that I am not successful. And I really had to start getting honest with myself and asking myself the question, do I want to trade this life that I have for a different kind of life that would give me that financial success? And what is even financial success? Like, how am I deciding that what I have is not enough?
Right.
And, I think these are the questions that I think so many people struggle with. Like, I have a wonderful life. Why do I think I need more money? And when is enough enough? When do we start to say, this is good, and be okay with that?
Yeah, and so much of it is, these narratives are destructive, right? Yeah. I call them bully loops, these loops that get stuck in our heads, these stories we tell ourselves again and again and again that are not serving us. It is time to shed. And you're right. I feel that way in my business right now. I love that you brought up that example. Our paths, as you described, have been wildly different. And I'm at that point right now too, where it's like, I don't make anywhere near the kind of money I used to make at Harley or in my corporate career. And at the same time, I am so fulfilled, to use the word we talked about earlier. I feel so like I am energized to get out of bed every morning. I love the work. I love that by choosing myself and my truth, that I stumbled upon a movement and became a fresh voice for rewriting your script of success in the world. And I love that I get to write about this. My first book was called Sabbatical, A Corporate Rebel's Guide to Finding Your Best Life. And that was about, the journey that we have alluded to, really me leaving Harley, realizing that I was on somebody else's path, and then starting to blaze that trail. And now I'm writing book number 2 on this whole concept that we're talking about right now of successful. And it's like rife with all of these questions because we are comparing ourselves, or we're believing. I'm like, right now, I'm like, Shelly, you're making ends meet. You
That's
are
right.
more joyful and fulfilled than you've ever been in your entire life. People send you notes. I've decided, here's something interesting. I'm really curious about your reaction and maybe your version of this. So I've thought about a new currency. So when I get hung up on this idea of, oh my God, there aren't enough zeros behind the revenue that, my business is pulling in, and yet my work is so rewarding. So I was like, what would it look like to reframe that? So I've decided my currency is love notes. Right? And and I'm sure you get these, girl. I'm sure you get these because of the powerful work you do in all areas of your life, like you described. The love notes are when one beautiful soul writes me a note that says, your book changed my life. Your book helped me through a really difficult transition. Your book gave me the courage to do what I've always wanted to do. Your book gave me, on and on. I could go on, and people tell me the most vulnerable, I have goosebumps telling you this right now, like the most vulnerable, beautiful, courageous stories about whatever it is. It could be I went to, I switched jobs from a place that I'd been forever because this new role, new company, new whatever is aligned with my truth. It could be I got out of a relationship. I've heard that story many times. I really, really looked at what I was pretending not to know, which is one of the questions. So my truth is, or my currency is, I hold on to these love notes. And whenever I go into this bad place of telling myself, oh, you're not making enough money, and look at all these other people, and they're, they say they're 7-figure blah blahs, whatever. I'm like, I am changing lives. I am inspiring people. I am liberating one beautiful soul at a time, which is exactly what I set out to do. Is there any more powerful currency than that?
I love this so much. And even this is so funny. We're so aligned, Shelley, because even before you started talking about that as a currency, I just got done doing my taxes. Fun.
Woohoo!
But, and you know, so like I have a page of all of like the incoming, right? Everything that has come into, all the money, financials that have come into my business. Wouldn't it be interesting if we had another column like that is just part of what we see as how our business is doing, like the health of our business is these, I call them touchy feely, because that's how they make me feel. Like when I read an email that is pure encouragement to me, I have a file in my inbox that's called touchy feely, and I file it there because I do go back and I read these. In fact, I just had a beautiful listener reach out to me because I'm on a current break from I haven't been putting out episodes. We're recording this in April, so I haven't been putting episodes out in March and April. And she sent me a beautiful email, and it said, you know, I've noticed that you haven't had any new episodes. I hope everything is okay. You've helped me listen to my inner voice so much. Like, I read it in the morning. I like started crying because you're right. Like, that is how I want to feel.
Me too.
Dollars in my bank account don't help me feel that way.
No. And practically, we know that unless we're independent wealthy, which we've both pretty much just declared that we're not.
That's right.
We do need to make money, but it feels so out of balance to put all of the emphasis on a certain dollar amount. And by the way, no shame in the game of like getting to be, a business that's 7 figures or 8 figures or whatever. Amen. I just never want to lose track of the fact that that is not what really matters. And the reason I'm doing what I'm doing is because of this other currency, touchy-feelies, the love notes, however you want to describe it. And I have to just tell you, I got goosebumps when you said that, because I also have been on a pause from my podcast. My last episode came out in mid-January, and I'm rebooting it to relaunch in March. And the last episode I published was a solo episode. I call them solosodes that was about embracing pausability. Mm-hmm. And so we are practicing what we preach. And I wanted everyone in my community to know that it's okay to pause. It's okay to say, I just don't have the energy to bring to this right now. It's okay to say, you know what? I need to go rejuvenate, and I need to go play for a while, and I need to, find my creative voice again. It's okay to pause, because I don't feel like that is said enough in the culture we live in.
I 100% agree. And not only is it not said, I feel like there's a sense that it's not acceptable.
Yeah.
And
let's celebrate it.
Yes.
Let's celebrate the hell out of it.
Yes, because truly that is listening to your inner voice. All of these things that we're talking about, deciding what is enough in your bank account. And thank you for pointing out that, like, we're not putting down making money at all. I want people to make as much money as they want. I think the point is we also get to decide when that's enough.
Yeah.
And that doesn't have to look like someone else's. And I, in this world of social media, especially as an entrepreneur, oh my gosh, like every single email is like how to make 7 figures, how to take your business to 10x, and all of the things. And you can get kind of caught up in that. And that has happened to me in the past. And, honestly, this is hysterical. Last June, I finally, after many, many years of like wishing and hoping and wanting, I hired a housekeeper, a house cleaner that comes every 3 weeks to my house. She is a completely woman-owned business. She has women employees. They come and they clean my house in like 2.5 hours, and it is beautiful. And I love it so much. And I feel like that was the moment where I thought, I do not need a penny more.
Yes.
it's that, like those little things, like to me, I was like, oh, if I can afford that, that is living the high life. And, it just really brought home to me this understanding that the life you live is, we need to use that as our basis of how we track that fulfillment, how we track that happiness, how we track that success.
It's so true. And you've just reminded me, I did an episode on this, and I think it would be an interesting topic for us, or it's on topic, this topic of successful. But one of the ways that I, quote unquote, track myself, and I really say, I don't use the word track, but I use the word more like, how do I check in?
Yes.
How do I check in on the idea of like, is this feeling like I'm aligned? Am I feeling like I'm living my truth and that I am fulfilled? And so I have these 5 questions, and the questions sometimes vary, but I have 5 questions that I ask myself at the end of each day. And I talk about this a lot because I think it's worth, each and every one of us thinking about, well, what are my non-negotiables? What would, if I were going to ask myself a set of questions, maybe it's 1 question, maybe it's 3, maybe it's 5. I have a thing with odd numbers, clearly. But, what would that look like for you? And I'm happy to share what my 5 are if those would be inspiring.
Absolutely. Please, let's hear them.
I really love this idea because it also forces us to slow down, right?
Yes.
It forces us to slow down and check in and listen to that little voice, because the little voice is the one that is answering these questions. So for me, here's what they are today, like in this moment, in this season of my life. The first one is, did I show up for myself today? And what I mean by that is, did I say yes to myself more than I said, yes to anyone or anything else? So that's another way of like, am I staying aligned to my values and boundaries?
Yes. Thank you for saying that word, boundaries.
I know.
Say it if you didn't.
Yeah, and exactly. And, we can dig into that. Boundaries are a huge piece of this, right? But so did I show up for myself today is asking, am I really being honest about, my energy, my priorities, my values and boundaries? So that's 1. Mm-hmm. Number 2 is, was I guided by what lights me up versus the shoulds? Right? Because the shoulds that we mentioned earlier are someone else's terms or agenda or expectations. I mean, fill in the blank here, right? So was I really guided by what's important to me? And in my case, that's usually checking in on my mission. Did I liberate one beautiful soul today? Whether it was a comment on the socials, a beautiful note somebody sent through, a phone call or a text that I got from a friend or someone in the community. Again, it's a different currency for checking in and sort of feeling like, yeah, that's success to me. The third question right now is, did I show up powerfully in service of my mission? This is probably a little bit redundant with the previous one. Did I help or inspire or liberate at least one soul today? And I use this idea of ROI, meaning not return on investment, but ripples of impact. Am I feeling my ripples of impact in the world? Because ultimately, that's how all of this stuff takes off, and that we, affect real change in the world.
I love that, ripples of impact.
The fourth one is, did I do at least one thing that scared me today? So this is the courage question. And my whole mission is around really living a life that is more authentic, more courageous, and more purposeful. This is what I want to inspire every beautiful soul to be doing. So I challenge myself to say, did I do one thing that scared me today? It can be a little tiny thing, but this is one I often say to people. I invite you to do this at your dinner table with your family. I had a coach who did this with his young kids. And every day they would come back and say, yeah, you know what? I introduced myself to this new kid at school, and I felt a little scared to do that, or a little insecure or whatever. I love this because it keeps us growing and it keeps us creating forward, as I like to say. And then the fifth one for me is, how do I feel? Like, period, feel in all caps, because we get so obsessed with our to-do list and whether or not we ticked all the things off the to-do list, and we get so absorbed in the busyness, and then we feel completely defeated and shitty at the end of the day.
Yeah. And that's no fun. Nobody wants to feel like that.
It's no fun. And there's a difference. I think it's important to call out here that there is a difference between, I feel so tired because I left it all on the field today, and I feel tired because I basically just gave myself to everyone else and didn't do the things that light me up, or the things that I, this, what I call radical self-commitment. Like, I wasn't true to myself, so I feel incredibly drained. Those are two different things. So this, how do I feel, really forces me to check in and listen to my body and listen to my inner voice. And it's powerful. So what are those questions, for you and for your listeners? I think we can all, create our own that feel like they tick off our non-negotiables.
Yeah, 100%. I love it. I love that so much. And I just, as you were going through those, I thought of a couple of examples, because sometimes it's easy to hear the questions and then it's harder to apply them. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
So, for example, like, number one, did I show up for myself today? So yesterday, for whatever reason, well, I had a crazy day yesterday, and I was so tired. I got in the bed at 8:30 and that was showing up for myself.
Yep.
So, I think, sometimes that those words, show up for yourself, like, we don't always know what that means. And I think that really is the crux of listening to your inner voice and listening to your body. Like, do what you need to do. And there's no shame there, and there's no regret there. Like, that's what I needed to do last night. Another thing was, did I do one thing that scared me? This is a tricky one, right? Because I think we naturally go to, like, the scariest thing. But there are little things, being vulnerable, for example.
Yes.
Like, that is a daily practice that when we dig into that, it proves itself over and over again as something that we truly need. So, like, I'm in a leadership group here in Syracuse, and we had a meeting on Tuesday for, like, a subgroup of that. And, it's 12 people who don't know each other very well, who are all leaders in the community trying to plan something. So you can just imagine all of the pitfalls of that, different personalities and whatnot. And the facilitator of the group sent out an email and said, it was kind of a rough meeting. We all need to be respectful. We all need to listen and allow other people to speak. And as I sat there, I thought to myself, I think I was one of the people who maybe said too much. I got into my idea brain, which is a very exciting place for me, and I just went for it. And so I let the group know that in the email, and that was terrifying. Like, yes. I thought, I don't want to, this feels really scary to me. And I felt like also it was a necessary part of the journey of being in that group. Like, that's one of the things that I'm there to learn, is even though I'm flush with ideas all of the time, sitting back and listening is also equally important and necessary. And so, like, I said that, like, at the next meeting, I'm going to come as a listener first.
It's beautiful.
And, it was scary. So it doesn't have to be jumping out of an airplane scary.
No, exactly. I love your example. And, here I'll add to it. Like, my, vulnerability is a big one. And especially right now for me, it's showing up as, what does it look like to be 100% true to myself and my desires in my relationship? And that means speaking my truth when it feels really scary, when that, evil little voice in my head is saying, yeah, you know what? The more you keep saying you need X, Y, and Z, the more likely he is to leave you.
Yes.
Right? Because that's what the evil voice is saying. And,
don't ask for too much.
Don't ask for too much. Don't show up too big. Don't, all the things. And so I'm in a relationship that is 7 months new. And I've really challenged myself to say, this might be the first time ever, because of all the work that I've done and continue to do, right? Because there's no destination. There's the constant becoming, that I am showing up as my badass self 1,000,000%. And that means that I'm having a lot of courageous and vulnerable conversations. So lately, over the past 7 months, the answer to, did I do at least one thing that scared me today, is usually a conversation I had with my boyfriend.
Yeah. Well, and isn't life great and funny? That it sends us all of these opportunities to constantly, bump up against that boundary that the boundary of being afraid, that feels like, oh, it just feels a little too uncomfortable to step over that today. But we are given these opportunities every single day. And that can be, we don't have to do it for all of them, but even choosing one makes a difference.
Yeah. I find courageous conversations, not only with my boyfriend, but in my life in general, with everybody in my life, as it relates to my business, with, and clients and communities, like you described. Courageous conversations are a great place to start. You're right. It's not necessarily the, oh my God, I'm going to do the jumping out of the airplane or whatever it is. It's often that small thing like, I think I'm just going to avoid that conversation for now because, it feels too raw. It feels too real. Challenge yourself to do that. Where in your life right now do you need to have a courageous conversation? Do that thing. What a beautiful step forward.
Yeah, I love it. I love it so much. And the beauty of that is doing that thing, one thing that makes you scared, is going to be another thing that goes into your fullness, your successful cup, yes. I'll call it, right? Because that's what we're talking about. This is part of what success is. There are so many columns. If we're picturing a spreadsheet, there's so many columns. There's the money column, sure. But there's also the love note column. And there's the, did I do something? Was I brave today column? And am I making an impact column? And am I showing up for myself? Am I sticking to my boundaries? There's all of these columns that really start to add up. And I love it so much. Shelly, I love it so much.
It's so juicy. Like I can already tell you and I could probably spend 3 days talking about this, 100%. If not longer, right? And what you're reminding me of is something, as I was writing the overview for the book that I'm, book number 2, as I said, I think I'm going to call it Successful, because it really is about choosing to live and lead that way. And one of the things that I was thinking about as I was writing the overview is this idea of like, why do we obsess about doing success versus being success? Mm-hmm. Yeah. Because successful is truly about how we are being, how we are showing up in the world, how we are initiating those ripples of impact. And, so many of these questions really trace back to our beingness versus our doingness. And, that excites me.
Yeah. Well, and I think also like digging into that, we're rebelling. Like you talk about being a rebel, right?
And rebelling for is what I say. Yeah,
we're rebelling against, or like we're rebelling against the status quo. This is what the shoulds. We're rebelling against, like, this is what we think, all those old beliefs that aren't serving us anymore, and we're rebelling for like the life that we really want to live. And
Yes.
that is powerful, and it takes courage, especially from a reformed good girl.
Yes.
You know, like that is a way that I'm brave, by like saying, no, I am going to break this rule because it needs to
Yeah.
be broken. You know, like, why is it a rule to begin with? When we start to question why things are the way they are, that also leads to this feeling of success and like understanding what we really want and need in our everyday life.
It's so true. And so many of those quote unquote rules are ones that when we really get curious and investigate those rules, they're ones that we've kind of made up ourselves and held ourselves accountable for. It's like we get to decide how we want to do this, right? We're not
Right.
talking breaking laws here. But there's certain, I've caught myself in this in my own business where it's like, oh yeah, but I have to do it that way, or it should be done that way, or whatever. And I'm like, says who?
Yeah.
This is my business. I get to decide how I want to run it. I get to upset every business model on the planet if it feels fulfilling and right to me. So I invite everybody, like, the next time you're like, yeah, this is driving me crazy. This is insane. Why do I have to do it that way? Well, maybe you don't have to do it that way. Get curious about where that's coming from.
That's right. And that takes us full circle back to your quote. Here, if the path before us is clear, we're on someone else's path.
Yeah.
And, also, I think following someone else's path ultimately leads to discomfort every single time. It's friction, it's a rub, because it's not aligned with who we are individually. So, oh my gosh, Shelly, I just love, like you said, we could go on for hours. Can you please tell people where they can connect with you and learn more about what you're doing, and also know when your book comes out?
Yes. So my first book is already out. Sabbatical, the one I mentioned, came out in January of 2020, and you can find it anywhere that you buy your books. And I always say, please support your independent bookshop. We want to keep those guys alive, or those ladies in many cases alive. My second book, Successful, I think I'm going to self-publish this time and try to get it out before the end of the year. So
Wonderful.
yeah, so you heard it. I'm not sure I've even made that statement publicly. So here we go.
Yay!
I know, right? And so the best places, honestly, I would say go to my website, sabbatical.com. It's 2 B's and 1 T. Sabbatical.com, and sign up for my newsletter. It's where you get all of the inside scoop and soul fuel, what's lighting me up, and just you get the behind the scenes of my world, and you'll learn a lot more about the book journey and when the book's coming out and all of that. And if you want to play, come join me on Instagram. I'm at Sabbatical right now on Instagram. Just an FYI, I am going to be shifting all of this stuff to become the Shelley Paxton brand. Probably in the June timeframe, but regardless, all these things you'll still be able to find me, and it'll point you in the right direction. And I'm also Shelley Paxton on LinkedIn if that's your preferred place and you want to connect there. And I am rebooting Rebel Souls podcast, which is on all of your favorite pod platforms. There are many, many episodes, like 80 some episodes out there now, and I'm going to be continuing that journey starting again in May. So it's fun. And honestly, the journey, the invitation I would love to leave everyone with is, you mentioned Rebel For, and I think Rebel For is, this concept is so empowering and so expansive. It lights me up, and I am giving all of you the invitation to rebel for who you are, which is your authenticity, what you want, which is the courage to create the life that is successful, and the impact that you want to have in the world, which is your purpose. So I wanted to leave with that invitation. And if you want to continue the conversation, find me in any one of those places.
And I'll put links to all of those things in the show notes.
Perfect.
And the podcast notes. So it sounds to me, Shelly, like your 5-question practice is a way that you really deeply connect with your inner voice each day. So what do you find she's saying to you these days?
Oof. She, at the moment, is telling me to, you're going to love this because this is another one of my forever life lessons. Trust and surrender. It's all coming. Trust and surrender. You have planted the seeds. You have done the work. Trust and surrender. Just like stop white knuckling the wheel of life. And I'm really paying attention.
Mm-hmm. The image I had when you said that is step into the flow of the river instead of trying to go upstream.
Yeah.
Like, just
instead
pick
of
up your feet.
Trying to plant my feet, right?
That's right.
Yes.
Pick up your feet and let it take you where you're supposed to be taken. Oh, so beautiful.
So much truth.
Yeah.
So much truth. Yes.
Shelley, thank you so much. This was so fun today. And we're going to have to do this again sometime. So
I would love it. Yes. This has been amazing. And I hope there were some nuggets that everyone took away. I enjoyed it. This felt very selfish for me because I feel like I found a new soul sister. So it was awesome connecting with you.
And I just, everyone who's listening, please reach out to Shelley and connect with her. I don't think that you would regret it. I just love all of that. And I especially love those 5 questions. And I recorded this many months ago. And even as I reviewed my notes that I took during our interview and the questions, they are powerful. And when we ask ourselves powerful questions, you know what we get? Powerful answers. And those powerful answers are what we can use to guide us. When I talk about listening to your inner voice, this is what I mean. You have to ask yourself the questions that you want the answers to. And that requires courage, and it requires honesty, and it requires practice. And all of those things are things that you can do if you want to do them, if you desire that. And if you struggle with understanding the how of that, let me know, because that's what I'm really good at. I am really good at teaching you and supporting you in the how of listening to your inner voice. So if you're feeling like you could use some support in that, reach out to me at kelly@kellycovert.com, or you can book in for an idea hour on my website at kellycovert.com/ideas. And as always, I would love to spend time helping you learn how to listen to your inner voice, because that's part of my life's work. And I thank you for being here to let me do that. As always, I want to remind you that you are deserving of the success that you want. It doesn't have to look like anybody else's. In fact, it shouldn't, because then it wouldn't be yours. Remember this: each and every day, you are worthy.